different. We have 7 rays, the rays 1, 3, 5, and 7, and 2, 4, and 6 are kind of have a hard time understanding each other, a little bit like male and female. The 2, 4, 6 is more on the female, and the 1, 3, 5, 7 is more on the male side. And these different rays influence the different parts of our makeup, and all of us have parts of all the rays influencing us, but all of us are more influenced by one side more than the other. So this causes quite a challenge in understanding our fellow men and women, because their makeup, the makeup of anybody you meet, is quite a bit different than your makeup. So understanding that, basically the essence of each one of us is quite a bit the same, but we have the illusion down here in physical reality that we're a lot different than we really are. And when we focus on those differences in a negative way, there's great problems created for group activity. When we look beyond those differences to what is the same in our essence, then miracles can happen. I bet Lorraine has some type of comment to say about the discussion.
Me?
Yeah. What kind of comment do you have? What's going through your mind right now?
Nothing. It's true.
Well, Lorraine, you're supposed to say, "Oh, you were inspired, JJ. I was. You just must have read my mind. I had this deep thought." That's what you're supposed to say there.
I didn't get the script for today.
Okay.
I wanted to say that I really appreciate that you, as I was saying on the molecular chat, you translate DK into English, because that guy sometimes, a lot of times, sounds like he's writing something that's going to be fine print on some kind of contract, and it's like only a lawyer could understand. And you're doing a good job of making DK understandable. Whenever he comes back and teaches again, I hope he improves his use of English, because I've never seen run-on sentences that take up a whole paragraph before.
Yeah, some of his sentences are really long, and some of his paragraphs are really long. Matter of fact, we can go ahead with we can have a short lesson, I guess, unless somebody has something they want to toss around.
Try reading The Secret Doctrine and see what you think about that.
Yeah, that's even harder. Yeah.
Yeah, but the hardest one is Cosmic Fire.
Well,
never start with that one.
Stretch yourself. Go beyond your limits. Take each line.
I tried to start with the treatise on Cosmic Fire, and I just about almost gave up on DK altogether. That's not
a good one to start with. Is like Reappearance of the Christ is written pretty easy to understand.
Yeah,
in fact, when I read that, I thought that DK left a lot of the wording just up to Alice A. Bailey on that. Was my feeling when I read it, because it sounds a lot like she would have written it. And so I think that I picked up the way that was written was that she picked up impressions as to what was supposed to be said, and then she pretty much wrote it in her own words, because it's probably the easiest to understand book for the layman that's out there.
Well, you don't give steak to an infant. You have to start with pablum. But if you don't, that they say the journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. But if you don't take those steps, you don't get to the end of the journey.
Yeah, and I found an important thing. I heard when I was young that if you don't know a vocabulary word, you should look it up and try to remember it. And I didn't do that till later on in life, and it was really good advice. And this particularly applies to the Tibetan. As you're going along, look up the words that you don't understand, especially the words that he uses over and over. So once you get some of the Eastern vocabulary down, it will help a lot. And now when I read him, it's almost like reading anything else for me. Now, Curtis is a long time student. Did you feel that way? Is it a lot easier to read now than it used to be, Curtis?
Oh, heck yeah. I'm reading Treatise on White Magic. This is the second or third time I've been through it, and it makes a lot more sense the second time. The words are easier to understand. It's easier to understand what he was really trying to say. But he does use an extensive vocabulary, and you're right. You should look up the words. That's kind of a step to take if you really want to understand them.
Now, Joshua started. When did you first start reading the Tibetan, Joshua? 2-3 years ago?
No, I started reading it a number of years ago because you talked about him and all that.
How many years has it been since you first read him?
Well, I don't know exactly when I first started reading the books, but it might have been in 2005 or 6.
Oh, so it's been a while then. Okay, so maybe about 12 years or so. Yeah. So is it a lot easier to read now than it was when you first started?
I don't know. I don't have a clear memory of that. It makes sense that it would be. But I guess I'd heard a lot of these concepts and things in reading your stuff before I started reading his stuff. So it was easier in that regard.
Yeah, what was your first Tibetan book?
I'm not exactly sure. It might have been Ponder on This or Treatise on White Magic or
one of those, huh? Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
But I want to make a note about the run-on sentences thing. This is something I heard historically. Like writers would write in these big, long sentences, but then there was this one author, it was like Dickens or maybe somebody else, wrote in very short sentences. And people really like that. Maybe I'm forgetting this, and you mentioned this in a previous
Yeah, I did.
All right. So
yeah, that was Hemingway. Yeah, Hemingway. He made short sentences. Everybody was writing in long sentences when he started writing, and he wrote in short sentences. And somebody came to him and he says, "Well, where'd you get this bright idea writing in these short sentences? This is really making your writings take off." And he says, "I didn't know how to write a long one." So anyway, so that was a cute story.
When I started reading White Magic was 1971, and it was with a group. And there were about 7 or 8 or 9 of us that all met together in one room. And we would read one sentence at a time, and then we'd discuss it, and then we'd talk about it for however long it took till we really understood it. And so reading with a group and discussing it is a very good way to learn.
Yeah, and we could go through one sentence at a time and probably spend the rest of our lives on this White Magic. So, because each one of his sentences has quite a bit of thought behind it. That's one thing I like about DK's writing is every one of his sentences has a lot of thought. And when I'm preparing my class, I try to condense things. And sometimes it's very difficult to take a couple paragraphs and to condense it into a major thought because there's so much thinking in those couple paragraphs. But have to do it somewhat or we'll never get through this thing. So anyway, go ahead.
I was going to say, I was 27 when you introduced me to the first Tibetan book, was Initiation, Human and Solar. And of course, I was an active Mormon at the time and thought they had pretty cool stuff. I remember telling you Man, Joe, I didn't know knowledge like this existed.
Yeah, I remember that very sentence when you said that. That kind of tickled me when you told me that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty
And
cool.
okay, rule 11. I'll read it again. 3 things the worker with the law must now accomplish. First, ascertain the formula which will confine the lies within the ensphering wall. Next, pronounce the words which will tell them what to do and where to carry that which has been made. And finally, utter forth the mystic phrase which will save him from their work. So he's going to go through and analyze this rule so that we can understand it. And he's talking about the first part of it here. He says the first part of it is ascertain the formula which will confine the lies within the ensphering wall. Now, when I first read that, I didn't have a clue as to what in the world that would mean. And I don't think most people would. So he figures, well, maybe I better explain it a little bit. He says that all forms make up a myriad of lives which were created by a central intelligence using the law of attraction to draw them together. He cites an example of a solar system to an atom. They're all put together by this basic thought. That thought pulls the elements together to produce a creation. And it's all creation is a result of a thought form that's created by intelligent thought. And the thought form that's behind creation has 4 main characteristics. First of all, the thought form itself, and we're talking about Rule 11, where the thought form of the creation, the first 10 rules bring us to the point to where the blueprint is all developed. And the creator pretty much has an idea of what he wants to create and manifest. And this thought form that's behind creation has 4 main characteristics. First of all, it's brought into being through the conscious use of the law of attraction. Anybody know what the law of attraction is?
Well, it's a magnetic pole that we use.
Like attracts like.
That's true. And what's the principle behind the law of attraction?
Energy follows thought.
Good, Ed. That's exactly right. Ed's right on track as usual here. Energy follows thought. So the key to the law of attraction is to do what with your thought? Let's ask Annie here. Hopefully she's available. What must be done with thought to make the creation materialize? Oh, she must have had to leave. Okay, let's, who else wants to answer that?
Full force with that thought.
Yeah. Okay.
Desire
Could you,
it.
what say?
Desire it.
Okay, desire it.
Focus it.
Okay, you're headed the right direction there. Focus it. And the most important thing is to keep the energy in the thought, the focus there. Now, this is difficult sometimes because as we're going throughout our week, we have all kinds of problems. You got to go to work, you got to make money, you got to take care of family and friends and things around the house. All kinds of things are pulling you away from your central thought that you may have in mind. So you got to have that thought there. The energy of the thought should always be in the background. If it can't be right on the surface, it needs to be in the background. So the law of attraction will work if we keep that focus there all the time. And that focus, we have to learn to keep that focus on what we might call automatic pilot. Okay, so if it's important to you, if it's gone down to the astral zone to where you have a lot of desire around it, that desire will help keep the thought on automatic pilot, so it's always there in the background. Okay, and that's an important principle. Okay, the second characteristic of the thought form is it's formed of an infinite number of living entities that are attracted by the mind of the divine creator and thus enter into relationship with each other. And this is an important point in creation, is that everything is alive. You just pick up a rock and there is actual life within that rock. You look at a molecule through an electron microscope and there's life in that molecule, in that cell. Wherever you look at, there is some type of life there. And this is the key behind this rule, where he says, ascertain the formula which will confine the lives within the ensuring wall. Okay, so everything is alive. So if you're going to create something, as a creator, you are dealing with sending lives to the proper place so the creation can manifest. So that's an important thing to realize. An important part of the thought form is the thought form is composed of actual lives of some kind. Now, lives are on the physical plane, they're on the emotional plane, and they're also on the mental plane. So we have lives on all planes, and the creator is a director of lives. Just like in a company, the owner of a company, say, has got 20 employees. He directs those lives, those 20 people, so the company is maintained, created, maintained, and expands and performs. Now, us being creators are a little bit like that, except we're manipulating millions of tiny lives to accomplish what we want. And this is why energy and thought are so important. Energy follows thought. So if your thought is consistent enough, you will actually draw the lives through the law of attraction. You will draw these lives to the thought form, and then the thought form will eventually manifest. Okay, the third point here in thought forms is the form is the externalization of something that the creator has, and then he makes points. The creator's done a number of things to externalize it. First of all, he's visualized. You visualize the end result of what you want created. Second, you build intelligently and colored or qualified so as to meet the purpose for which it was intended. Okay. Next, vitalize by potency of desire and the strength of his living thought. Okay, so we take our desire to the astral plane and we vitalize the thought form. 4, held in shape as long as it is needed in order to perform a specific work. Okay, so after the thought form is created, we have to keep it there. We have to sustain it. Keep our mind steady in the light is the acknowledging a key principle behind creation. We need to keep our focus steady on the creation to that we want to manifest. And finally, that the Creator connects to himself by a magnetic thread, the thread of his living purpose and strength of his dominant will. In the end, it takes a certain amount of will, and the Tibetan differentiates between will and just pure determination. Determination is a lower aspect of will, and he says there's a higher aspect of will that's actually more potent than determination. And when the Creator tunes into this, it gives him a kind of a magical power to make things happen. Okay. The fourth characteristic of the thought form, he says, is this interior purpose which has clothed itself in mental, astral, and vital substance, is potent on the physical plane just as long as it remains in the Creator's thought. Okay, we kind of covered that. We have to keep the focus going. And second, it keeps its distance occultly from the Creator. Many thought forms remain futile because they are too close to their Creator. Okay, so let's say you start a business, and everybody in your business becomes your best friend and wants to hang out and do stuff like this. If the guy gets too close to people in his business, let's say somebody's really screwing up, he needs to fire this guy, but he really likes him because he's now like a personal friend, so he keeps him hanging on. Or maybe he doesn't want to change his position to something that will really work because he's going to offend people. So the Creator must not get too close to the creation, or he won't be able to use, it'll be difficult for him to make the most intelligent moves that he can make to manifest the creation. So he has to keep the creation at a distance enough so that he can always look at everything objectively and not let the emotions get in the way and destroy the creation. Finally, he says it can be directed in any desired direction under the law of least resistance and can find its own place, thus performing its desired function and carrying out the purpose for which it was created. Okay, that's an interesting statement. So once the creation is going, it will then find its own place. This kind of we do as a group. We've created a group, and so instead of telling everybody what to do and micromanaging, we kind of let everybody kind of find their own place and then see what manifests. And if the thought form is strong, then they will manifest in harmony with the thought form. It says the formula might be therefore regarded as an idea emanating from the divine thinker. And everything that we do that is successful on this planet is a reflection of something that comes down from the divine thinker. He says, not too many people are cause on their own, but we're mostly live in a world of effects. And the cause, the things that really make things happen happen on a higher level than appears. It appears that we're making a lot of stuff happen that really are effects of something higher than ourselves.
So you could say that things are happening through us where we are the thought forms of God. So God is working through us, motivating us, connecting with us, and moving us forward. So we get these ideas from God, who is just simply manipulating his own thought forms, which is us.
Right. We take the source, which is God, and he has an idea how the universe needs to progress ahead. And these thoughts go down and they're picked up by the solar logos and the planetary logos and Shambhala, and then from Shambhala to the hierarchy. And then from the hierarchy, they spend a lot of time in deep meditation, focusing on drawing different people into their consciousness that they can implant ideas in their minds as to things to do. So maybe Curtis gets some bright idea, and maybe it's not his idea at all. Maybe he just picked it up. It's a thought current that the higher lives put. I guess we could say it's like the internet a little bit. The internet is really a symbol of, it's a creation that is a symbol of how the masters in the hierarchy work. This spiritual internet has always been here since man has arrived on the earth. And when you say you get you have an interest in something, you will Google it and explore the internet, and then suddenly you'll come across something, you'll think, hey, this is a good idea, I'm going to explore this some more. Now with our minds are like a search engine. When you're in meditation or when you're just thinking or contemplating, your mind is the subtle parts of yourself are just floating around in this spiritual internet where all the minds of the masters and the higher lives are melded together, so to speak. And so then all of a sudden you will focus on a particular thought, and this will come down to you as an idea. And it was an idea perhaps you didn't just generate completely on your own. You had an interest that led you to the idea, but you picked up a thought current that's out there. And you pick up that thought current and you think, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to head this direction, or I'm going to explore this more. And when you do, you're doing your part in creating something that's a grand design of an intelligence much higher than yourself. And sometimes we kind of bungle it. We don't do very good in doing our job, but eventually things get done and get corrected. Flawed people that we are.
So we get these ideas just out of the cloud.
Yeah, the rain cloud are noble things.
Yeah, I get them.
Yeah, right. He compares this process to building a bridge. He says, in the beginning, it's the math and the drawings. We have all kinds. In building a bridge, you gotta figure out all the ingredients that go in it. Not only the ingredients, but how to put them together so the bridge isn't going to collapse. And it takes a lot of math and calculation. And but this is basically, he gives the bridge as an example of how a thought form descends. The thought form is created with a lot of intelligence and math and design, and then we pick up our part in building the bridge. And it may be entirely different than somebody else's part, but we're all builders. The formulas for creation, he says, exist on higher planes. And there are 3 books that must be read. First of all, the Book of Life. He says the Book of Life is read by initiates. Second, he says the Book of Divine Wisdom. And that's read by aspirants of all degrees. Sometimes it's called the Book of Knowing Experience. And the third book is the Book of Forms. which is compulsory reading for all in whom intelligence is awakening to functioning activity. So how are these books read? Say the Book of Forms. Do we pick up the Book of Forms somewhere and read it like a regular book? How are these books read? Or the Book of Divine Wisdom, read by aspirants, sometimes called the Book of Knowing Experience. You read these books by going through life. Life is like reading a book, okay? Reading a book, you read it, and then you understand it, then you apply it. So as we go through life, we see all kinds of things that teach us, that incorporate information into our minds, and that is like reading a book. And as we go through life and we experience different things, we read on 3 levels. The initiates read the book of life, where they see a lot more meaning than the average person sees. The aspirants, the people that are seeking higher wisdom, read the book of divine wisdom, and they see the symbols of life. When things happen, they say, hey, this happening has some meaning to it. And then the Book of Forms, which is read by more average people, they have to, they see the obvious lessons of life, and they're reading they're getting the obvious. It's a little bit like reading the scriptures or the Tibetan or any inspired work. The average person will read it and they'll remember the stories. Maybe they'll read the Bible and they'll remember the stories about David and Goliath, and parable of prodigal son, the basic meaning of these things. This is the person that reads the Book of Forms. The person that reads the Book of Divine Wisdom will read the Bible, and he will see an interpretation. He'll see the prodigal son, and he'll read the details and say, hey, this has meaning that kind of applies to my life. But then the one that reads the book of life will read the scriptures, and he'll see deep meaning, a core meaning behind it that everybody else is missing. And so we have these 3 books that are read, and each one of us must learn to read all 3 books. All of us are into the Book of Forms. Some of us are into the Book of Divine Wisdom, and a handful are touching on the Book of Life, where they learn the real meaning behind life and happenings and what is entering into their consciousness and what it really means. And that's the Book of Life is a great thing. And those who are written in the Book of Life are those who are able to read the Book of Life. So that's our goal. And we'll about out of time, but any comments or questions on that?
In regards to what brings the little lives together into a form, a key element is the female energy of attraction. And in other words, these little lives, they have to, to make them regulars at your club or whatever, they have to have something that makes that club attractive. It's like, oh, I want to be a member of the Gathering Oak. I want to be a regular. Or like the old, what was the old TV show, Cheers? Go where everybody knows your name. So I'm constantly telling the hostesses and whatnot, it's like, if we have a theme contest, we want to set it up so that we get 3-way ties and 5-way ties. We want the most number of winners, because winners, it registers in these people's minds. I want to go back to that club next week when they have the next event, because I always win money there. So, you've got to make them want to be a part of it.
Yeah, desire has to enter in to make any creation happen. Well,
I wonder-
Stacy, we haven't heard much from you today. What kind of comments you got to wrap everything up?
Well, I'm just a student. I'm listening and learning.
Good for you. Okay.
When we're dealing with these little lives, this is the elemental essences, the devas, and the chain of evolution that's parallel to humanity. And it includes the angelic beings. And like when God said, "Let there be light," who was he speaking to? He was speaking to the angelic beings, the mother matter side of life. These essences build everything that we have. And if we had studied a treatise on cosmic fire, we would know the names of these various elemental essences, but we may not need that. But there's a book that I have that deals with the creative process in a very detailed way, and it comes from Lucille Cederkranz.
Oh, yeah? Okay, yeah, I have all of her books, I think. I'll have to see if I got that one.
Well, it's contained within a set of books called Applied Wisdom.
Yeah, I've got that one, yeah.
Okay, and this has been included in that. This came out before those books.
Oh, did it? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of invisible lives that are involved in creation too. This is kind of the epicenter of creation, because the physical plane is by far the most difficult plane to manifest thought in. In the soul plane, you just think of something and it's there for you. In this plane, just one thought alone won't do it. It takes a tremendous amount of energy. As a matter of fact, it takes a tremendous amount of attention for the soul to even contact us here. It's impossible. It's almost impossible for the young souls to get that contact. But the material plane is very, very much of a challenge. And so when we master manifesting here, we really accomplish something that we can be proud of ourselves when we return to the soul plane. And we can feel, if we were successful, we can feel really good about our life, even though it had its ups and downs. Okay, any other comments or questions before we wrap it up? Appreciate everybody being here, and let's focus on this next week to keep our minds as positive as possible. And we will see you next Sunday at 2 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, Mountain Daylight Time.
Gotta keep on keeping on to get through the darkness.
Yeah, and hold your mind steady on your creation.
That's right.
What I say.
Bye, everyone.
See you next week.
So long, everybody.
Steady in the
Okay.
light.